All right, now we're coming down to the final stretch, and really we're looking at line 695 to the last page. And first off, this has to do with a counter offer and then the signature pages. So, Mark, um, uh, you're a listing agent. You have an offer come in, and it is you decide to counter that. And at this point, you would check this box on 695, correct?
Under this contract, that is correct.
All right. So understand, if you're representing the buyer, you would have submitted this offer. The seller has this offer, and they check this box, and they send back to you with an addendum a counter offer. All right. So 695, we're going to check that box. If you're representing the sellers, hey, we like a lot of this. However, we're sending it back. Okay.
Right.
Now, as we move to the final page, this says this is intended to be a legally binding contract. If not fully understood, seek the advice of an attorney prior to signing. All caps. Hey.
Yeah, let me tell you what happens in reality. The seller looks at the price and how much am I paying in closing costs and when is closing. That's what goes on. Because I don't know how many times I've said they're a grown-ass adult over the age of 18. They never read the contract.
Yes.
But there's some bold language for you to tell when when your client alleges they were unaware of what was inside of this thing.
Correct. So a couple things that we need to see on this last page, Mark, is first read the offer, read the contract, seek advice prior to signing. There's the warning. What are the things that we need to see on this last page? Let's first address the counter offer, and then we'll address the conveyances to foreign buyers. We'll dig into that as well. So,
Okay.
counter offer. You're the listing agent. You've received an offer from the buyer agent. It's good but not good enough. You're going to check the box. Then, does the seller on the other side, because it would have come line 714, 715 with two buyer signatures, does the seller sign this agreement?
So my advice to listing agents, if your seller is countering that they're not actually going to sign on the seller line, they could do multiple things. One is they could check the box counter offer and sign as the seller. However, the concern there is that the box that you checked indicating that there's a counter offer is not on the signature page. It's on the page before, and that page could disappear, or the box could get unchecked.
Be overlooked.
Right, or whatever. So what I recommend is, one, don't have your seller sign this one, check the box, send over the counter. But what we've encountered is there are some brokers in our area that says it's not, quote, a complete contract unless the seller signs on the signature line. Now, I'm going to disagree, but I think the best way to handle that is you would physically write C counter offer, and then the seller can sign right behind that. So in the seller line on line 716, you're literally going to write C counter offer and then have the seller sign behind that. Now, if you're doing some sort of DocuSign, I don't know if that's you have the ability to.
You can drop in text for
Okay.
that. But keep in mind, C counter offer.
Correct.
You want to highlight that because if with the contract in front of you, you'll see that on the previous page, to Mark's point, it's separate. And sometimes people will just look at that, see a signature, and think they'll go to the first page, they'll look at the second page, see the closing date, it's executed, and go forward. So C counter offer.
And it's not uncommon from the closing standpoint for the closing company not to receive all pages or all pages plus all addendums. And usually we find out the day before closing when we do the settlement statement, and one of the agents calls up and says, I don't see the credit from the seller to the buyer. And we go, whoa, we must have missed something. And we go through our contract and I'm like, I don't see it in here either. And they're like, oh, I forgot to send you this addendum. Well, how would we know that that occurred? Same thing with this. If the seller signs that signature page, and for some reason somebody replaced the page before it,
Right.
then nobody would know.
There you go. So here's what I would recommend. In this situation, you want to always document. And I personally, If I have an addendum or a counteroffer, when I send that over and I put together my PDF packet, I put the addendums on top and the contract to follow because that is going to supersede. Now, what we do know about counteroffers is it's basically saying what we're changing here are these items, but everything else in the contract remains if it's not specifically in conflict, right?
Correct.
All right. Now, on the back page, there's two other items. One is the attention seller and buyer, conveyances to foreign buyers. What do we need to be aware of here?
I think in our area, probably not going to be a big topic, but obviously in 2023, there's been issues with U.S. versus China or anybody on that side of the political spectrum. So at least in Florida, our governor enacted a new statute that basically said we don't necessarily want any of these foreign countries of interest people purchasing property in our land. There should already be an addendum that's going to be signed. And, you know, like anything else, when it first came out, it really seemed, well, how do you know? The only way you know as a buyer's agent or a listing agent is you see a seller's last name, you know, Suarez or, you know, Wynn, something like that. So I know a lot of agents up front are like, God, this sounds racist. I'm not going to send it if their last name's White, but I am going to send it if their last name is Wynn.
Which would be Vietnamese, not Chinese.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of public disclosure. So all you're saying is, listen, if you're not related to any of these people, not a big deal.
And it boils down to this. There were some parties operating on the behalf of hostile governments. So the Communist Party of China gave a person the money and they were buying it through this person, but really it was the Communist Party. So these are hostile countries, perceived hostile countries, and it's not that a person who has come from there can't buy. This is just a recognition that you're buying this not as a representative or a front person for these hostile governments trying to get into our agriculture or near our military bases, things of that nature.
And when you represent the buyer, make sure you go over line 712 and 713 because they will have to sign an affidavit at closing. And again, you don't want to go through the entire process. And then the closing company gets surprised when the buyer says, wait a second, nobody informed me I was going to have to sign an actual affidavit under oath with perjury consequences, even though, like we just talked about, at the top of this page in big bolds, if you don't know what you're signing, hire an attorney, have them explain it to you. So at least from the buyer's standpoint or buyer agent standpoint, make sure you go over this line with them.
And your job, look, your job's not to investigate their origins, but it's just the notice here, the attention is, if you're part of the People's Republic of China, acting on their behalf, the Russian Federation, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is North Korea, the Republic of Cuba, or the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro, or Syria, you got to prove that you're not acting for the government, okay? So that's the main piece. Other than that, Mark, is there anything else we need to look at down here on broker compensation?
This comes up every once in a while. So brokerage agreements are between broker and broker. So if Keller Williams is on one side of a transaction and Century 21's on the other, the MLS will dictate total commission and commission splits. So what I always recommend for agents, especially a buyer's agent, is when you submit an offer, print out the MLS, make sure you have evidence on the moment you submitted your offer what the MLS said the split was.
Yeah.
Because we've had multiple occasions where somebody has attempted to change that after contract. And if there's bonuses in the MLS, the thing to remember is the MLS is not part of your contract. So if there's a bonus alleged in the MLS, you're going to want to get some written confirmation, whether in the contract or from the other agent, that yes, we are paying this bonus out. Because a lot of them will have language like, upon receipt of acceptable contract in price and terms. and then you get under contract, and then the listing agent says, well, no, the terms were not acceptable even though we accepted them.
Yeah.
Therefore, we're not paying out the bonus. So to kind of protect that, make sure you have some email correspondence with the listing agent during the contract negotiations to make sure that that doesn't occur. Because in theory, like I said, the MLS is not part of this real estate contract. This contract is really between a buyer and a seller, and commissions are between broker and broker. And in that case, if the listing agent decided to deny some sort of bonus or proper commission, then that's a broker to broker conversation. It should not affect closing time, seller, buyer, or any of that.
Yeah.
Now, this paragraph here is really direction to me as a closing agent, saying I can disperse directly at the table to the agents so long as I get some sort of disbursement authorization, which Keller Williams uses disbursement authorizations, which is just going to itemize, X amount goes to Mark, X amount goes to any referrals, X amount goes to Keller Williams. So it's an itemization. Otherwise, if we don't, as a closing company, like Coldwell Banker doesn't do those.
Yeah.
We send one lump sum wire to Coldwell Banker, and then they divvy it out once they've received it.
So understand something. In Command, as you're pulling together your opportunity, it does ask for you to print out the MLS form. If you're the listing agent at listing and at under contract, also get it at close. And this is not just busy work. It's to Mark's point. When you go under contract, immediately print that form. That sets a benchmark for this is when we went under contract. This is what is stated in the MLS, so that if there is any question or monkey business, you have a reference point, because you can't just go back in time on the MLS and say, but what was it 5 days ago? Once it's changed, it's changed. So make sure that you're documenting that, and the best practice is print that MLS sheet, and then you'll upload that and keep that on file inside of Command. So, gang, guess what? That is the listing, the buyer purchase agreement. So the residential contract for sale and purchase. We have made it through these, and there are other contracts. There is the as is, and we'll touch on that. The distinctions are a little bit different, very minor, but you've got the contract. Now I want you to go practice it.